Hello. Anyone? Okay. I seem to be having some issues and I see a lot of drop frames. Hey guys, welcome to my second live stream and what's shaping up to be another disaster. Yeah, so basically the flight today was a bust. We got rain and it lasted a lot longer than it was supposed to. Even if it did rain, they gave it a 20% chance of 2 millimeter rain, and it's been raining for like 3 hours where I was. So I decided to just call it quits and come back to the workshop. Can anyone tell me if the video's coming through all right? Because on my end it does not appear to be. For some reason, all the speed checks were fine, and now I start the stream and it's crap. I think the audio should be... Are there any drop frames? Because I'm seeing a lot on my end. The audio should be coming through nicely, though. Okay, well, in any case, we're not going to be looking at anything quick-paced. Okay. Yeah, the sound should be good. For the most part, my tests have shown that the sound usually works pretty well, even if the frame rate's crap. Well, Eddie Mackin, you must be the only one, because looking at the speeds in OBS, I'm pretty certain there's a lot of drop frames. I'm not going to be able to confirm that until this whole thing ends and I can play it back. Anyway, I can see that we have 14 people, which is pretty surprising given all the delays and all the setbacks. All of a sudden, one USB-C port on my laptop's not working, so I wasn't able to get the hotspot, actually the internet, going through tethering. So yeah, so it's running over a hotspot, and apparently that's not ideal. I don't know why. I have it set to 5G. Anyway, thank you all for coming. And just so this live stream wouldn't be a total waste like the last one, I said it was going to be 2 hours ago or an hour ago when I posted the notice that it's not going to be a flight. I said it's going to be a Q&A. So anyone got any questions they like to have answered, have at it. This will be completely improvised off the cuff thing because I was not prepared to do Q&A. Not that it requires a lot of preparation in any case, but if it's not going to be a flight, might as well address some of your concerns or questions or whatnot. So yeah, it was a nice location. I would probably go back and have another go at that when the weather is better, because there's a very nice view of the mountain peak I wanted to go to, and also what would be at my back, there's a fortress, like an old Roman fortress. We went there today with the kids and it started raining, so basically we spent 2 hours there in the rain. So got soaked. Yeah, so I was going to fly to the top of Mount Vitusha, but from its back relative to where I used to fly before I used to fly from basically within the city, which is on the other side, to the mountaintop, and that was around 12 kilometers from my usual location. And then at some point, right around the 5G implementation, something happened. They installed something somewhere. And from that moment on, with analog video, though I have not yet tried that with an HD system, from that moment on, every time the ground antenna would get to sort of point to the mountain, the video would go to shit immediately, regardless regardless of the directionality or the video transmitter output power. So yeah, I haven't been able to get up there since then, and now hopefully the CHD system is going to make that possible again, but I want to start by going at it from the backside. Yeah. And we'll see how that goes. Usually in some other situations it goes pretty nice, depending on your partner, so... Okay. Has anyone ever considered using lithium ion for forward flight instead of using LiPo only for VTOL setup? I've been stressing about this. So the MFE Hero I'm using has that exact setup. I have an 8S 6P lithium ion battery for the forward flight, and I have a 6S 4500 milliamp hour Tattoo 95C LiPo pack for the VTOL, and that's actually working pretty well because I can get up to 3 takeoff and landings on one pack. Of course, I recharge it every time I fly, but recently I was doing some testing, so I actually did 2 takeoffs and 2 landings on one of those without recharging it in between. I was changing some settings, and yeah, it's working pretty well actually, because you get to use pretty much all the capacity of the lithium ion battery, and then you still get to land safely, which is a lot for a VTOL. I mean, with the other VTOL I use, the Flying Dragon, the one I use for mapping, and I'm going to do a video about it because it's an awesome machine. Out of actually all the planes I've had so far, the Flying Dragon has been the one that probably flies the best and seems to be very efficient. It's very quick. And that one, due to its setup, and initially I did not have the luxury of time to figure out how to do it, one lithium ion for the forward flight and one LiPo for the VTOL. So that one has a huge 31,000 milliamp hour LiPo battery, one of those semi-solid state blah blah whatever. I'm not sold on the capacity because I've never been able to get anything more than 25,000 out of it while testing it on the charger. But then I have to land in 45 minutes or about when it gets to 22 volts, because otherwise I'm afraid it's not going to have enough power for the VTOL side. I've talked to a couple of manufacturers of these, and they claim that it should be possible to get that down to like 19, 20 volts, something like this. So the idea being I can start the landing sequence later, but I haven't been brave enough to try this because it's a work plane and the gear on board costs... The camera alone costs a shit ton of money. So I'm not that willing to experiment with it, but I get 45 to 50 minutes out of it, then I have to land regardless. And the charger puts back around 20,000 milliamp hours. That's 6S. Okay, let's see. There was once a sequence in a video where you told you were experimenting with 1.2 gigahertz and that you would make a video about it. And just, yeah, 1.2, at least for me personally, never worked quite as it should. I have some pretty old gear, to be honest. I got a few receivers from Ready Made RC ages ago. I even had something in them replaced with something better that would reduce interference from 433 megahertz. Because back then I was using, I'm not sure if I had the Dragon Link yet, but I was using the R-Link, which then after that, Charles from My Fly Dream actually bought that and he renamed it to the MFD Link, but it's essentially the same system. I have a set of it somewhere around here. I have quite a few receivers from that, but I bought them from the company R-Link while they were still independent. I haven't actually used the system since. So every time I've tried 1.2, there's always been some issue. The last attempt I made on it was on the, I'm not sure of the, hold on, Mars. If anyone knows the Mars plane, the Mars FPV plane, I had that and I decided to make that 1.2 gigahertz. I got some supposedly tuned antennas, DIY antennas, but they should have been tuned. It was just a work of art, all the wiring, everything, but the plane itself flew good. If you can make it, if you can get it in the air, it flew well. And then if you drop the speed too much, it will spin on you without even a hint. You know, at one point it's flying, the next it's spiraling to the ground. So I managed to drop it, and I haven't repaired it since. I occasionally take one piece or another out of it. It's right there behind me in the workshop, but it's not something worth showing. So yeah, nothing came of it. I'm not sure if I'm gonna go back to that. I mean, HD seems to be working pretty good now, and I'm not sure if I want to experiment with 1.2, but we'll see. In what I do, everything's, you know, one before the last, you know, nothing's final. There's always something new that somebody decides to try and make me review and test. So I can't say much right now. Maybe I will go back to try that again, because I've seen some people get some crazy results. But 5.8 is easy. 5.8 gear is well made. Now, hardware-wise, it's well filtered. You don't get that with 1.2. Unless somebody makes something like up-to-date hardware-wise, I don't feel like it's worth the hassle. Because I remember it, 5.8 was a pain. Before the racing copters, 5.8 was a major pain in the ass. Anyone who did that then would know and would be able to attest to it. I had to do my own filtering. Nothing was readily available. It was difficult. You do things you don't really understand because somebody else did it. Somebody else told you how to do it. You get some components, you put them together, and you hope that works. Sometimes it worked, other times it didn't. I'm not looking to get back to that. It was annoying. It was frustrating because you put so much time into something and then it doesn't work. And you have to go back basically to the drawing board because you have no idea why it's not working. It should have worked because whoever you talk to either did it or said it should work. Those were frustrating times. Yeah. 5.8 is pretty good. I've seen some... I've seen on AliExpress some 3.3 gigahertz systems, and back in the day those had some promise, and they look up to date now, so hopefully they sorted out the filtering, so no matter how you power it, you won't get any interference. But I haven't, they're pretty expensive to be honest, and I haven't really considered buying one to test. I mean, HD really spoils everyone, doesn't it? The latencies are going down. The picture is just unbelievable. Comparing my first range test and what I could see on the radio at 20 kilometers, nothing analog compares to it. It doesn't compare even if it's, you know, 1 meter away from you. But at 20 kilometers, you get snow in the analog, and the HD is working on half the power, and it's perfect. So, I mean, technology moves on, and I suppose for the most part, we should try and keep pace. I haven't given up on analog 5.8, but I mean, HD is starting to make a lot of sense now, with it being even more user-friendly with the C system and the likes. I mean, yes, it's expensive, sure. But then again, you get a lot for your money. I put together an old recording of an old DVR of 5.8. It's just I know there are those who still like 5.8, and I know there are those, particularly the DJI fans, or maybe even one on Walksnail, was it, and HD Zero. I'm not sure what became of it. Haven't really kept up to date on those, but you know, some people swear by it, others say it's too expensive. Yeah, valid points. I mean, it is expensive. All right, let's see who's next. Have you ever used Foxtech PG20 dual battery swapping board? Would that be for the flight battery? Let me see, what is that? Foxtech dual battery swapping board. Let's check this out. What is that for? Whoa. Increased flight time 30%. Sure. Supports low voltage. The power governor device increases at least. For cruising. Suddenly drops. This battery will be automatically switched to main battery cruising to ensure safe motor. Okay. No, I've not used that, and certainly not at $200. But I can see, yeah, I can see how that can be useful in certain situations. But if you have two batteries, and actually that's pretty impressive, the text here says that for the Foxtech Nimbus, they use a 6S 2200 milliamp hour battery for the VTOL. So I'm guessing they have optimized. Okay, are you still hearing me okay? Because I'm getting some 50% drop rate on the frames in OBS. This is crazy. I don't know what's happening. Okay, I hope you can hear me all right. So they are using a 2200 milliamp hour battery. The problem with VTOL takeoffs is that everyone says you should go up 50 meters. If your plane is set up right, you don't have to go up 50 meters, and certainly not for the landing. The problem is that a lot of people automate all of this. Okay, maybe it's not a problem, but it can cause issues, hence why you need yet another board that costs $200. Let me see. What's the weight on this thing? It does not say. Okay. Okay, can you still hear me? Because is this still running? Anyone? Damn, Nathan. Triple kilometer area. What's your maximum distance that you've been able to get on that 1.2 setup? I mean, once you get the hang of it, I would say, yeah. I mean, why not? But I've tried 1.2 gigahertz very little, so probably have not invested enough time in it to get it working properly. And hence my results really suffer. I think I've been out to maybe 12 kilometers with the Mars plane, and that was, I had some work to do maybe 2 or 3 years ago in a coastal city here. We were outfitting a pretty big boat with an autopilot, and I took the Mars plane with me. There was some pretty nice farmlands around the like, I don't know, the place where the boat was being built and where we worked. So at the end of the day, I would fly the plane after we are done working, and I would fly it over the water because I wasn't sure what's going to happen to it. And I think I managed to get 12, 13 kilometers out of it, but it would drop. It would start fading off. And at that point, I feel like, why do I even bother? Bigger antennas, bigger hassle, and I get the same range I get from easily from a 600 milliamp hour 5.8. No, milliamp hour, 600 milliwatts VTX on 5.8. So, yeah. But if you're getting 3-digit distances, yeah, I mean, excellent. Well done. Well done. What's your, that's Nathan Steger. What is your maximum distance that you've been able to achieve? In the meantime, I can't see any weight on that dual battery swapping board, but looking at the cables, and in theory these should be thick, I would say that's at least another 100 grams, probably, cables and all. So you create a problem by automating everything, because essentially a lot of people automate takeoff and landing for mapping missions. I don't. And in that, they set some pretty high altitudes for the transitions. So it takes time, because on a VTOL, everything is dumbed down compared to a proper copter. You know, up speed is low, down speed is low, because you don't want to risk stressing it too much, else, you know, tune or not, it's gonna capsize. And we've all seen the videos of VTOLs coming crashing down, you know, flapping all around. Nobody wants to see that. So, you know, everything's dumbed down. And basically, they have a 2200 milliamp hour battery in that plane, which is, I've done the calculations. I can use that on my plane as well, on the MFE Hero. But that would give you only one takeoff, one landing, and they still need to be relatively quick, because that's not a lot of capacity, and it being smaller capacity means no matter how many C's you have of discharge rate, the voltage drop is going to be higher compared to a larger battery. That is why I chose to stay with the 4500 milliamp hour packs in the Hero, despite them being a bit heavier, because I thought better have. Oh, okay. Crap. Oh, hold on. Of course I knew I forgot something. Where's the bloody cable? So now that one of the ports on... Crap. Did we get power? No. We didn't get power. Damn it. Okay. Okay. Are we good now? Is the sound back? Yeah. Okay. So while wrestling with everything else, I forgot to plug the power to my laptop, and since for some weird reason I've lost the one of the USB-C ports, so it no longer wants to charge through it. Laptop was running out of power, and for some reason the capture card I use for the camera I have plugged in that you were looking me through uses the same port on the USB hub I use, so it's a bloody mess. Yeah, I'm gonna have to have that USB port looked at because I really need a lot more than one for all of this. Anyway, where was I? Does anyone remember what we were talking about right before? Oh yeah. Yeah. It's awesome. I love it. I love it. Yeah, turned out pretty nice. This was 3D printed, and then I glued it together because it was in pieces, naturally. And yeah, put the LED strip. Yeah, it's all right. I like it. And I got that microphone because of the ambient blue light that it can do, which almost matches the color of that thing. Not to eat yellow snow. Yeah, Skyfalls. We were discussing not to eat yellow snow when we see it. Sure. I think, yeah, for the most part, that should be like instinctual. But just in case it's not for someone, yeah, you should be mindful of that, and you should keep that in mind. Don't eat yellow snow. In the short term, probably it's not gonna cause any issues, but who knows? Okay, yeah, I think I was talking about the batteries. Yeah, so a lot of people would program their autopilots to take off and do the transition at least 50 meters. They call it safety. I don't understand what is safe about 50 meters. If your transition fails during the... Okay, if the transition fails at 50 meters, you can switch back to plane mode. And in that case, yeah, sure, higher is better. And I've had a few close calls when on one side the VTOL motors fell off on the Flying Dragon. I think you must have seen it. I think I included it in the MFE hero videos, if I'm not mistaken. And then, so yeah, even though I saved it, if it stops though, and then your VTOL fails, 50 meters is not gonna save you, especially on a heavy rig like a VTOL. It's just not happening. So you either have to do this at 100 or 150 meters, or try to do the transition for landing as low as possible. And because I usually do manual takeoffs and transitions and manual landings, for the takeoff, I try to go maybe, depending on the terrain ahead of me, 20, 30 meters perhaps. For the landings, I seriously go for 5 meters, maybe even lower if I can afford it, because that would stress the whole system a lot less. And if there's an issue, and I've had that happen, when just as you transition, the VTOL motors decide to call it quits, the plane will drop from 2 meters, not 50. And trust me, the difference in damage caused to the airplane would be quite significant. So yeah, that's those are my thoughts on on that dual battery swapping thingy or whatever, you're carrying extra weight for essentially to compensate for ignorance or lack of experience. You know, either way, you're gonna, on a plane it's not that apparent, but you're gonna lose some flight time. And at some point, all of that starts to pile up. Okay, let's move on, because I feel like I've been talking about this one thing for quite a while. Foxtech, okay, for a tilt rotor VTOL, so I can use LiPo for VTOL. Squirrely nuts. Yeah, okay, so for a tilt rotor VTOL, you can use LiPo for... Well, if it's a tilt rotor, you're not swapping between batteries, are you? Because you... Well, in either case, you're using one battery. Even on a... doesn't matter what type of VTOL it is. You can have one battery powering everything, but in my experience, having two batteries, if you can afford the space, because they would be more inconvenient to place. If you can afford the space and you can arrange them somehow, you can use two batteries, and you can use a LiPo for the VTOL bit. Just make the calculations and make sure it's properly sized one for what you want to do. Maybe if you want to give yourself some capacity, you know, over what you think you would need, do so at the cost of weight, because that's actually useful. If you have two batteries and then you waste the forward flight battery for the forward flight phase of the flight, what are you doing? You can't really switch to it during the VTOL phase, because your plane's still gonna drop out of the sky. So if you want to use that, betting on it switching if something goes wrong, it's you're gonna have the same effect if you've wasted your forward flight battery. And if you haven't, you have the same problem of not utilizing it fully, so you can have some reserved for landing. So I don't know. This thing looks... I don't see a use case where I'm involved, and I will be involved in flying the plane, and I will need to use that, because you make a sacrifice either way. So I don't see the reasoning in installing it, especially if you do your own takeoffs and landings. So let's move on. Let's just check the chat. All good? Yeah, nobody's complaining that they're not hearing or seeing me, so got my Uni RC7 and A8 Mini last week. That's Ralph Patipillo. I'm getting video and telemetry, but can't get gimbal to pan yet. I'm working on it. Can the A8 pan? Actually? Is that a thing it can do? Because it might be entirely possible that the 8.8 might not be panable. If everything else is working, panning the gimbal should be pretty easy, especially if you connect it to the... Okay, let's put it up on screen. C Assistant. When you download the C Assistant... okay, let me just put the video below that. And crying out loud. Okay. Okay. So in the C Assistant, you have yaw. This is the one you should set for the gimbal, and then whatever channel you set here, try putting one of the sliders. But even if you don't set that, you should be able to pan it by using the touchscreen. So if it's working on the touchscreen, I mean, if everything else is working on the touchscreen and pan is not, I'm inclined to think the A8 gimbal might not be panable. So that might be something you can look into. I don't have that camera, so I can't really comment. Okay, let's see. How do I get back to... Okay, hold on. This is so annoying. Okay. All right. I think that should make it easier. All right, let's move on. Squirrely nuts again. Yeah. Walksnail GT 2 watts VDX5 went 49 kilometers with 4 True RC X2 antennas on goggles. Well, yeah, that sounds like a pretty good result. What was the name of the Titan Dynamics guy? Mohammed Adib? I don't recall it off the top of my head. Hold on, let me see. Mohammed Adib, yeah. So he did with the HM30 system, he did right around the same with the 21 dB patch antennas. So, and supposedly that's a lot lower output power. So yeah, this HD stuff is pretty awesome. I'm thoroughly impressed by all of it. It's really, and we'll be coming up with some amazing stuff in later this year. I'm not allowed, sadly, to say what, but yeah, there's some pretty good stuff coming out, and they're also going to utilize one more frequency band. So it's gonna be fun to see how this works out. But yeah, if we believe that the HM30 system is 320 milliwatt hours, okay, again with the milliwatt hours, what is wrong with me today? If we believe that the HM30 system is for real 320 milliwatts of output, and it can do 50 kilometers, that's pretty impressive. I mean, even having to do it on 2 watts, given the quality of the video picture you get, that's pretty awesome. Okay, let's move on. Lost you, haha. Okay, yeah. Okay. Discussing, yeah, 61 kilometers was Nathan Stiger. 61 kilometers was straight distance, but was more focused on height in the last years. Okay, Nathan, so what was the maximum height you were able to get? 61 kilometers is pretty respectable. On 5.8, I've never been more than 32 kilometers out, so that only goes to show how 1.2 really is the thing to go for if you're looking for the longest distance. But then I think there was an argument somewhere that because of the lower frequency, you actually get lower resolution because it's not able to move the same amount of data as 5.8. I haven't really done a comparison, so I can't attest to that. But there's logic to it. I mean, there's a reason why HD doesn't really work all that well below a certain frequency, exactly because of the amount of data that it has to move. 20, whoa, you've gone up 22 kilometers? What setup was that? What plane was that? Oh, please do let us know. This season, Nathan Stiger is gonna push out to 100 kilometers. Yeah, good luck to you. Fingers crossed you do it. Okay. Weather balloon. Okay. So you lost the plane. What plane did you lose at 22? A bit more detail. Dude, come on. But yeah, I hope you make it to 100 kilometers. I'm personally not gunning for that much. I don't have a plane that can go that far and come back. The MFE fighter, I think I got the maximum I got out of it in plane form with before adding the VTOL bit was 148 kilometer like maximum endurance doing huge circles around me. So even that's not going to be able to go out 100 kilometers and still be able to come back. But actually, what kind of plane are you using for that attempt? 4 planes ready, 2 MFE fighters. Okay. 1 line down. Right. Dragon Talon. I know the Talon can be pretty efficient if set up right, even if it's heavier. So that one might get it done, yeah. Ground antennas from paper box to 18 element Yagi. Damn. Okay. That is some pretty impressive setup. Double the output. 18 element Yagi. Are you using an antenna tracker for that? Because this would be one seriously directional antenna. And this is a question to Nathan, assuming he's still around. All right, people. No more questions? Come on. Who's got something to ask? Now's your chance. Who knows when the next time might be? Given all the issues I'm having, I expect by next week my laptop's gonna be completely dead, my workshop's gonna burn down, and the plane's gonna be lost somewhere without even me flying it. It's just gonna get up and go out of the garage. Okay. No one's asking any more questions. All right. So I'm gonna have to see how the weather is going. Okay. No antenna tracker. Used this antenna also on the 22 kilometer height record and was able to point it by hand. Jesus Christ. How? How were you able to point an 18 element Yagi by hand? I mean, if it's a balloon, sure, maybe it's more visible than a plane, but still, okay, might be visible. But still, this is crazy. So you're gonna... But, okay, so the 22 kilometer attempt was a plane or a balloon? Because I wasn't all too clear about it. Because you said 22 but lost the plane. So was the balloon supposed to release a plane at that altitude? Tommy Bolstad, EORS MAVLink with antenna tracker and ground station. I'm not sure what that means. EORS MAVLink. Grounds. I'm not sure about... I had a separate guy there for just pointing the antenna. Okay. All right. Well, he did a good job then. Well done. I hope you get to those 100 kilometers. Now, on to the sort of very not clear question about EORS. Okay, yeah. All right, that makes a lot more sense. Okay, that would have been interesting, dropping a plane from that altitude. Okay. So, Tommy Bolstad, EORS MAVLink. So, I'm not exactly sure what EORS support is for MAVLink. I have EORS only on the T1 Ranger, and that was like sort of its maiden use case here with me, because I haven't used it before. I hadn't used it before that. but I recently played around with the MAVLink LRS, MLRS, was it? What was the name of that thing? I think it was MLRS. Yeah, MLRS thing. And I haven't gotten it working properly yet, I think, or something's is messing it up because it's installed on the Flying Dragon. Antenna tracker through EORSTX. Okay, as long as you get valid telemetry back and it's stable so we can get the tracking data, it should work, yeah. I had a plan to use it in much the same fashion, the MLRS thing, because I'm having to do mapping in some pretty weird places, and every now and again the plane would go behind stuff. And the video 5.8 is pretty crappy when it comes to, your plane flying behind anything for the most part. Although I've been pretty impressed with how it works, 1-2 kilometers out between with a forest between me and the plane. I still get some video, but then you get to concrete structures and the video sort of goes away. The idea of the MLRS was that it promises quite a lot of output power, and I was thinking that I should be able to get at least telemetry working even roughly around some obstacles, so I'd still have an idea where the plane is and not have to worry about it. Okay, yeah. EORS has support for MAVLink. That's good. That's good to know. Okay, yeah, that should work. As long as you can get the reliable telemetry back and get it to the tracker, that's fine. Because actually, I think Charles did a very good job by enabling his trackers to use MAVLink. I've been talking to him for years, and I've been asking about this for a long time. And even when he made the smaller, if anyone's familiar with them, when he made the Telefly Tiny, it didn't have support for MAVLink at first. So I kept nagging because he mentioned it in the user manual somewhere, something about MAVLink. There were hints. And I talked to him and he was like, okay, yeah, it's gonna have support, not yet. And, I'm taking my time and I'm like, come on, dude. This is huge. 3-axis gimbal. Yeah, Ralph, it's a 3-axis gimbal, but it's not necessarily controllable via pan. I mean, the pan axis is not necessarily controllable. The walk snail repeater. Okay, hold on. One by one. Ralph, because that was an earlier topic. So Ralph, even if it's a 3-axis gimbal, that doesn't mean they give you the ability to control one of the axes. For instance, you can't control the roll on many gimbals. It has to be some DIY gimbal that would allow you to control the roll. And same goes for some of these for the pan. The A8 is a pretty small gimbal, so on DJI gimbals, you can't control the pan either. You control the whole copter. So maybe something of the same. Like I said before, if everything else is working via the touchscreen, if all other gimbal controls are working via the touchscreen and the pan is not, then perhaps the pan is not able to be controlled on that one, but maybe you should look into the user manual or try contacting C about it, because I don't have that gimbal and I have no idea if what I'm saying is true. I'm just theorizing based purely on the size of the gimbal. Nathan, you just need to try if the video gets worse or not, otherwise just move it back. Got it? Okay, yeah. That's about pointing the camera. Sure, but back in the day, when there was only the original MFD automatic antenna tracker, and it was $400 something, and I felt like that's a lot of money. One time I spent an hour and a half holding the bloody antennas, trying to point them at the plane, following that exact logic, and also trying to see what was happening and trying to keep an eye on it. That was one of the very few times that the plane was set on auto mission, and it was supposed to go out to some distance, turn around and come back. So I lost the video pretty early on, so I had to keep pointing the bloody antennas. I spent a long time there with the antennas, and that was the moment that basically convinced me that $400 is not a lot of money if I never have to do that again. And that tracker has been working flawlessly for more than 8 years, easy. Might be closer to 10. So I don't regret a single cent spent on it. And it's still working. I've only had to replace the tilt servo at one point. But that was it. Has been absolutely flawless for me for all the time that I've had it. And I have only good things to say about it. I think it has an update, at least Charles mentioned it recently, that can make it work with MAVLink. So for those that still have the original MFD antenna tracker, you can update it, although I haven't done so on mine, and I don't think I will, because I also have the crossbow mini, and I also happen to have the big crossbow one that's very expensive. Not gonna go into detail how I got it, but luckily I didn't have to pay for it because that's over $1,000, and it wasn't sent for me for review. I just sort of inherited it from a project that just the guy dropped everything and just disappeared, and we got minimum moving distance that it uses from the servos, but I never use them. Okay, but at extreme distance, even if your antenna is very directional, at a huge distance, like 50 kilometers out, that's a huge spot. So I'm not sure if the tracker is going to be able to move the antenna out of that by doing very, very small movements. Also, that might be a problem for the crossbow mini, the smaller tracker, but the big one uses, I think, stepper motors. It's a whole symphony while that thing is operating. It's ridiculous. It wastes a lot of energy, though. I can tell you that much. I haven't used it for, personally yet, because it's huge, and I just hate the idea of having to hold that around. But I might get to utilizing it at some point, because it can carry a huge antenna, and that is really tempting. But it's using stepper motors, so its movements are extremely precise. It can do very, very small steps. Okay, let's see what else we have here. By aiming the antenna. Okay, 3-axis gimbal. Have you seen the walk snail? Tommy Bolstad. Have you seen the walk snail repeater? Is that supposed to be repeater, perhaps, Tommy? I have not. I have not seen or read purposely anything on walk snail. The only idea I have of what it can do is by just glancing at some comments while scrolling my Facebook page. I haven't really looked into it in detail. If it has a repeater, that's fine, I suppose. That can improve the range, but then it depends which side is the limiting factor, the distance between you and the repeater, or the distance between the repeater and you. C also have a repeater, and for the most part, it's kind of useless. It's not useless. You can put it maybe 10 meters away from you. 20, I haven't tested any more, but the problem is that while it's in repeater mode, it doesn't output MAVLink telemetry on the UART port. So you can't connect it to an antenna tracker. So basically the whole idea was that you have the HM30 as a repeater on a tripod somewhere far away from you on an antenna tracker. And that would aim everything. You'd supposedly place it somewhere higher than you are in a better position for the plane. And then you do everything on your remote, either the MK15 or the MK32, but it doesn't output telemetry anywhere. So it's not really useful. Okay, what else? Squirrely nuts. How do you start a mapping business? I'm good with audio pilot. I have all the equipment except the cameras. I have a few big dracs and one 91-inch wing drac with a boom tail. Just curious. How do you start a mapping business? Well, back in the day, it might have been a bit easier. Nowadays, it's expensive. I'll tell you that. I didn't really start a business. I was sort of forced into it. Some guys from the Mathematical School of Sofia contacted me a long time ago, and they were like, because at some point in the maybe distant past now, I had a hobby store here in Bulgaria, and I was selling RC parts, and they called me and they said, we're having some competition here in the school, and we want to set up some prizes for the competitors, blah blah. They explained the situation, and they said, can you give us something to use as prizes, and we'll put your name somewhere. And I said, okay. I didn't ask them anything else. I said, okay. We agreed what they need. I packed everything and I shipped it out, and I never thought twice about it. I didn't check to see if they even used my name, if they even advertised it somewhere. It didn't really matter. Some kids called. They said they wanted to do something, so I just gave them the stuff. And a few years later, two of these guys called me again, and they're like, we need to meet. They didn't tell me it's them. They were like, we need to meet because we're in need of some mapping work, and we know we watch your channel and we know you can do it. So we met, and then they said, you remember a few years ago you gave us some stuff? And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. And we did some tryouts, some test missions around the city here. I think we mapped not a small chunk of it. I'm not going to say it was specifically by the book and particularly legal, but a few years ago things were a lot more relaxed. And then there was like 1 or 2 years gap again, and then they called and they're like, okay, so now we've got this booming business of doing 3D models of mobile companies' cell towers. But we now have people asking us to do whole cities, and we can't because we're using DJI copters, and doing a whole city is gonna take like a freaking year. So we need a plane. And I'm like, okay, sure, yeah, we got a plane. So they bought the camera because that is not something I can easily afford. And I provided the plane, and basically that's how it all started. I've been doing some odd jobs with some 3D models of smaller like houses or factories for other people for solar installations and the like, but I wouldn't call it exactly a business. It's like something I do when I have the time, or because it's not a regular thing, I make the time when it comes up. So in my case, not exactly, but in order to do to get to your question, in order to do anything that's worthwhile, you're gonna need some serious equipment. You can go cheap, and you can use a cell phone. There's an app called Open Camera. I've only tested it on the ground. I haven't really flown it yet. I had a plan I had an air loader, Ichin air loader back in the day, and I had a plan to put a camera on it and use it for some testing, very small scale agricultural mapping. but I never got around to it. Then at some point I sold the plane, and that was that. But there's an app, Open Camera, and you can use a cell phone, put it on a plane, and just fly around, see how it goes. The problem with that is that if you want to do a 3D map, which is what a lot of the work in over cities involves and entails, you have to do one pass with the camera pointed 90 degrees down, and then you have to do another pass with the camera pointed 45 degrees up. So that's a lot of flying. So even the first time around when we flew over a whole city, we got two Sony Alpha 6000 cameras. One was pointed down, the other one was pointed 45 degrees forward. Sadly, the results were not ideal. There were a lot of issues with that setup. So later we bought a 5 sensor mapping gimbal, which has one sensor pointing down, one pointing 45 degrees forward, one to the rear, and two to each side. So basically that allowed us to do maybe half the flights and get, like, it's beyond comparison how much better the results were. But that gimbal was maybe, it was $8,000 before shipping and import. I think now it's a bit cheaper. I talked recently to the guy, and I think he said it was around 6,000 something. So the price on that one specifically has gone down. But then you want to up your game, you have to go for the full frame one that has 5 sensors in it, and that was like over $20,000. So not quite there yet. Okay, Ralph, I changed pitch and yaw to 7.6 in assistant. I'm going to make a splitter cable S-bus, one end to air unit and the other to camera. Well, C, include a splitter cable with the system, doesn't it? There's a splitter cable that one side is supposed to go to your autopilot from the air unit, and the other side is supposed to go to a gimbal. That's assuming you run the control through the air unit. If you have a split system where the the C system is only handling telemetry and video, and you have something else providing the control, that one you would have to split, yes. One would have to go to your autopilot, the other one would have to go to the gimbal, but I see no reason why it would have to go to the air unit. Because the air unit itself should not receive S-bus. It doesn't need it. It provides S-bus if you have one connected to the HM30 on the ground, if you're using that system, or if you're using the MK series radios, you know, that's sort of built in. So yeah. Okay, wow, it's been an hour already. Okay, maybe we should call it quits here then. What the future holds. So I can only see the weather forecast 14 days ahead. The problem is now we are full on spring and I see only rain. So it's gonna be tough for me to say when I will be able to actually go out and fly, and for it not to rain, because I have some flying to do tomorrow, work related, and I can see rain in the weather forecast, so we'll see how that goes. But for the next 2 weeks, I see the forecast is showing rain. So I'm going to have to get back to you on that. Whether and when we're going to have the next attempt to actually live stream. It's so annoying. Last night, I spent a good chunk of time making sure that everything works. Connecting the cable. I got my LAN card now, the external one, with me. I didn't forget that. I got everything. I made sure last night that it works. And I go out and it starts raining. Anyway, at least we got this thing going, because I have been thinking of doing these types of Q&A live streams from the workshop. That is why I had to, in addition to changing the format of the videos, that is why I had to set up, you know, the light and all these little details. You're gonna see more in the coming weeks. It just takes a lot of time to get anything done because I have a lot of other things to do. I've got that work thing I have to deal with, and then a few kids and the wife, and all of that sadly takes, you know, chunks off of my time. I also like motorcycles, as it happens, and I have a garage full of them, and they're not all brand new. In fact, only the one the missus uses is brand new, because I got tired of her dropping the bike by not being able to understand how to use a front brake. I don't know what it is with women. You keep explaining, just press it like progressively. Don't just squeeze it sharply. You lock up the front wheel. It just doesn't sink in. I don't know what's wrong. Okay, a few more questions. Hey man, please do more live stream regardless if you fly or not. Everyone else enjoying your content. Thank you, Skyfalls. Much appreciated. Yeah, that's the plan. That is why I set off to sort of tidy up my workshop, but basically what you see tidied up is the only thing that's tidied up. That's why it's mostly black. It looks like a mess otherwise. Not really worth showing. That's why it's so dark. Because, you know, I prefer to have your attention on certain aspects, you know, some detail here, some detail there. I'm still working out a few of them, of the kinks, but hopefully within the next few weeks, I think I'm gonna get through all of it. But yeah, a lot of things fighting for my time, so it's going slow, but it's going, and I'd like to keep it going. Okay, Brian Mabbett. If you don't need FPV feed in return to home, could we run a directional antenna facing backwards out of the plane for better range? If we don't need FPV feed in return to home, can we run a directional antenna? Yeah, Brian. You can do that. The problem with that is anytime the plane goes like 5 degrees to the side from being perfectly straight relative to you, you're probably gonna lose it, or it's gonna, depending on your distance, it's gonna go the video signal's gonna go bad. Maybe if you put that on a servo, if you put that antenna on a servo, you're gonna have, the problem is you're gonna have to fly in a straight line, and you're gonna have to, basically your best bet would be to program an autonomous mission just straight away from you and back, because even if there's crosswind, usually ArduPilot, if we imagine this is the front of the plane and you're going in this direction, if there's crosswind, ArduPilot would compensate, so the wind would blow your plane to the side. But because ArduPilot does all the calibrations, it figures out that you're still going this way if it maintains some orientation relative to the side wind. So, you know, there's no getting away from that. So yeah, it will work, but you're limited to only one direction. I've thought about it. Maybe you can put, maybe it can be put on a small tracker, a small antenna tracker that's on the plane, if your plane's big enough to handle the weight and not really affected that much. And basically the so how's that? Oh yeah, so antenna tracker with a GPS on it, and then you're gonna have to find a way to feed it, or lock your ground coordinates to it, so it would keep track it, and it would have to change its own coordinates. Okay, yeah, should be possible, but again, limited to only one direction in a straight line. Chris, does the OSD in iNav work yet instead of C standard OSD? I would have to say no. Brian Mavic, that got you thinking. I've been thinking about this for, every now and again, on and off, over the years. And it never made sense because it was always more hassle to even try and attempt it than it would be worth if you get it working. Maybe if you get it really reliably working, but then you have a directional antenna that's on there, ruining your flight efficiency with all the drag it's gonna have, because this would be a bulky thing that's gonna be sticking out of your plane, rotating every which way. Then you have to figure out how to make it work with a fixed set of coordinates to the ground that are not going to be updating, or you have to somehow send your ground coordinates constantly to the plane. So you need like not MAVLink only coming down from the plane, but also going up, or something else that would send the coordinates up there for that tracker to work. But if you want to keep it all, very simple, you're limited to one direction. For the iNav, OSD in iNav work yet instead of C standard OSD? C doesn't work with iNav yet, so I don't think anything iNav would work in that system for the time being. All right. If there's no more questions, I think we should be good in calling it a day, and maybe this live stream might be considered, half saved, despite it starting almost an hour late than what was promised. If I'm seeing the information here, I think it's about an hour late from what was promised, and not actually giving you what was promised, which is a pain. But fingers crossed, next time I try to do a live stream flying, weather's going to be more cooperative, and also technology is gonna be more cooperative, and nothing's gonna fail. But we'll see how that goes when we come to it. Like I said, for the time being, the weather forecast is kind of crap. So I'm not able, up to the 5th of April, I see only rain every day. Maybe some days it will not really rain. The problem is I'm gonna know when we come to that day. So even if there's something, it's not gonna have a huge warning in advance. Or maybe if I go flying on a whim because it's not raining, it's not going to be live streamed, but you're going to see it later on as a regular video updating you on what's happened. So that's that. Thank you everyone who came and stuck around. It was nice talking to you, finally. So officially this is my first live stream with working audio, so you guys did not feel like you were going deaf. And I hope to see you next time, regardless if it will be, something like this or a flight. So, yeah. It was nice having you, and hope I'll see you next time. Bye.